All right, let us say hello to a man that a lot of people have been asking about for the last several months here on MMA Fighting. So I thought, let's just bring him on. Let's get the answers from the man himself, the 7th ranked 145 pounder in the world. Josh Emmett joins the program. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to have you here. And the last time we saw you, you had that incredible performance, that incredible fight with Shane Burgos. It was a unanimous decision win. And you did so with a litany of injuries. I think it was a torn ACL. You had a slightly torn MCL. I think there's a fractured femur in there. And I know I'm missing a few, but I know you had a bit of a chip on your shoulder heading into that fight. But to have that type of performance and to do it on one freaking leg, essentially, like, what does that mean to you and your confidence overall moving forward?
Yeah, no, Shane's he's an awesome guy. He's a good fighter. I knew it'd be a tough test, but I just feel like, I just know my capabilities. And so I wanted to go in there. I wanted to show the fans kind of new things that we've been working on and just a completely new game. And that all went out the window 15 seconds into the first round. So I just I couldn't move. Like, I couldn't move that well. I had to put on a poker face because it hurt like hell. And I had no stability. And a lot of people, it's funny because they're like, oh, the adrenaline, you must not have felt that. I'm like, oh, I felt it. There's a reason why you don't see NFL players, playing the last quarter after they tear their ACL. But yeah, no, it was a good fight. And I was just frustrated because I knew I hurt my knee, and then it turned out to be worse than I expected. Plus, I was just frustrated about the whole knee, and I didn't get to go out there and implement my game plan. But in hindsight, I got the win and got a bonus. So, I got 3 checks, so I can't complain. I'd be in a lot worse place if I, lost that fight.
It's interesting because kind of hearing your perspective on it, because to a lot of people, that was like an eye-opening performance. And you mentioned it after the fight, people sort of had the narrative heading in that, you were the knockout guy, you were the one-shot guy, but Shane was the more well-rounded guy. And, if you don't stop him and land that solid one punch that you've used so many times before, Shane's going to win the fight. And I know you saw members of the media sort of paint that picture themselves as well. Was that a little frustrating for you, or did you kind of use that as fuel for the fire, so to speak?
Yeah, it's a little frustrating, but I'm always the underdog. So I feel like, in my last 3 fights, 4 or 5 fights, I've been the underdog, big underdog. So I don't know. At the time, I was just like, man, when are they ever going to give me credit? But everyone thinks I'm just like a short, stocky guy with the overhand right. But I come from a wrestling background. I feel like in a lot of different, facets of the game, I feel like, I'm better here, I'm better there. And I do that with a lot of my opponents. But no, yeah, of course I use it as fuel to, fuel the fire. But at the end of the day, I just kind of focus on what I need to do to be victorious.
It's interesting just seeing you, you come into the UFC, and I believe it was your first fight. You had the thing with the finger, and then you became the overhand right guy. And now I feel like people are starting to see you for who you really are. And I know it was on one leg, you couldn't show everything, but are you starting to feel like a little momentum now after that win?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel like me in my career, it's been I've had some momentum, and then I get sidetracked. But before that fight, Dana was even talking about, Burgos and I, the winner of that was going to be in talks of a contender and be in the likes of the guys in the top 3, the top 5. And, I was there. I beat the number 3 ranked guy my second fight at featherweight. I was ranked 4th. I just had a minor setback. So I took in the long route to climb my way back. I'm almost to where I was at a few years ago. But yeah, there's only one thing in my sight, that I'm kind of gunning for. So, I just got to keep working. I got to first recover, heal this knee up. And then, I'm working every day to get better. And, I think the fans will be in, they'll be in for something when I do come back. I'll come back stronger than I was before. I'll get to implement that that spectacular showing that I wanted to with Burgos that I didn't get to. So I am excited for the return when that comes.
So I was going to ask you about that. Like, how has the rehab, the recovery been going? Like, how are you feeling around 9 or so months later? Like, where would you kind of gauge the percentage at with the knee right now?
Man, it's hard just because I've had, it's just been like, I feel like a roller coaster ride. I feel like I'm almost at the bottom of the roller coaster, just because I've had so many issues. I had, I did the ACL reconstruction and I used the patellar tendon. So I've had tons of anterior knee pain where they took the graft. And with me, I was doing really well in PT. I started physical therapy the next day after surgery. I stayed in Vegas for a little shy of 2 months. And I was doing like 2-a-days. I was working with Heather and Bobby out at the PI twice a day doing physical therapy. I was working with Bo doing strength and conditioning. And they said I was like way ahead of the game. I wanted to be, the Adrian Peterson of MMA. I was like, I'm going to come back. I'm going to be the first person she clears under 6 months, and I'm going to fight. And then for whatever reason, maybe at like the 3-month marker when I was back here, I was doing things and I kept complaining about pain in the patella. And I talked to the surgeon and he said, let's see if it goes away in a month or so. So at the 4-month marker, it was getting even worse. And so we did an MRI, and where they took, I don't know if you know how they take the grafts. Well, they like slice down your patella tendon, and they go bone from your patella, bone from your tibia, and then in the center is your patella tendon. So they take that out. For whatever reason, my patella tendon did not heal together, and my patella just had a big piece of the bone out. So he's like, well, you have a fractured patella and a torn patella tendon. He's like, no wonder why you're having so much pain. But I kept just going through all the workouts and stuff because I would ask the PTs, I was like there's pain here, and I can trust me, I can deal with pain. So I'm like, as long as this is not affecting my ACL, they're like, no, that's not affecting your ACL. I was like, okay. So I just kept doing it until I got the image. And then we had to kind of taper down, kind of figure out another game plan. I have a friend and doctor here in Sacramento that is big into, stem cells, and he does a lot of research out of UC Davis and things like that. And so, I did ultrasound with him, and we set up a game plan to do the stem cells. So I went into his clinic, and he drilled into my SI joint, so my back on both sides, literally with like a power tool, like a drill, and then extracted the bone marrow, and then they spin it like they do PRP, and then injected it into the patella. So right through my kneecap, right all into the patella tendon to hopefully create some type of growth factors. And it did. So it's been 3 months tomorrow since I did that procedure. And I have responded well to that because I went and saw him 6 weeks after. And before, it was like a complete like circle, just a hole, black. There was no healing. And then when I saw him 6 weeks after the procedure, it was like almost like a zipper shape. So it did heal, and there was like some speckles in there. So that's a good thing. So I do another MRI tomorrow, and then next week I'm going to go do another ultrasound. I don't think it's healed completely because I still have pain in it, but I can do things that I couldn't even do a fraction of that. So I am getting better, but it's just too soon to tell. I kept saying I want to fight in July or August, but as I'm kind of still dealing with this, I'm like, that's not going to happen. So in my mind, I will fight this year. I don't know yet. It's a little too soon still. So
would you say like that, the whole thing with the patella probably knocked you back like 3 or 4 months?
Yeah, I would say so. Cause I did I'd say about 3-4 months. You're right. Because other than that, my ACL is strong though. I know that it's super strong, but it's just, I can't do a whole lot with that anterior knee pain. And there's really nothing I could have done. For whatever reason, I didn't respond well to the surgery. And, I just didn't, cause the surgeon I went to, he did not suture that tendon, and some don't. They just think it grows back together. And for whatever reason, mine didn't. So, I think it is now, but I'll find out more tomorrow and next week for sure.
It's crazy, man. And since you've been gone, there's been some big fights at 145, and there's the title fight like a month after your fight between Volkanovski and Holloway, super close fight. Then we saw Brian Ortega beat Korean Zombie, earned his title shot. And then in January, Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar headlined the first ever MMA event on ABC. And I could see, Muhammad Ali behind you. ABC has this long history of combat sports on their network. What has it been like for you watching this division since your fight with Shane and everything you've had to deal with, man?
Man, it's, I don't know. For me, I always try to find the positive. At first, it's super frustrating, but then I truly believe everything happens for a reason. So I feel like, maybe when I do come back, everyone like that you said is they've been fighting each other and they're going to kind of weed themselves out. And then I'll come back to something bigger than I would have if I would have just kept fighting. Because even when I was out in Vegas, getting ready to fight Burgos, Sean Shelby was already talking to my manager and he's like, hey, we need Josh in August or September, something like that. And I was like, hey, let me win this fight first, so I know I would have fought already again. And that's the frustrating thing is I feel so good besides my knee, even though I had some black eyes and some cuts and stuff, but a week after the fight, I literally felt so good. And then I'm just like sidelined. So I'm watching all these fights. I'm a huge fan of the sport anyways. I always have been. So I watch every fight religiously, every card that I can. And yeah, they've been some amazing fights, and everyone's looking really good. And I'm itching to get back in there, but it also motivates me in physical therapy and training. I'm hitting mitts with my boxing coach. I'm doing strength and conditioning and doing PT, 4 or 5 times a week. So I'm literally working super hard every day but Sunday. And that fire's lit, that's for sure.
What did you think of Max's performance against Calvin Kattar? I had John Anik on a couple of weeks ago, and he said that was the single greatest performance he had ever seen sitting cage side watching fights. What did you make of his performance, and where would you kind of rank that one overall?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's like, how can you argue with that? It's like, it was an amazing fight. And then, what he did to Kattar, because Kattar's been doing so well and looking so good against everyone. And then Max just went out there and completely outclassed him. And, several times I thought they should have stopped the fight just because, I'm thinking about Kattar and just all fighters, like longevity of the sport. If you're clearly losing a fight, and you're taking that much damage, it's not good. But yeah, it was, I'd have to say it was up there with one of the best performances as well. It was, I think everyone was saying just how great of a fight that was. And it was awesome that it was the first one ever on ABC and, the history there. And yeah, he went out there and outclassed him and performed, great.
Yeah, it was just wild to even look at the numbers and just being like, wow.
Yeah, he set tons of records, right? In that fight.
Crazy. Yeah. I remember talking, I spoke with Calvin's coach and manager right after the fight. It was probably a month or so later, and obviously he took a lot of heat for not stopping the fight, and the thing he kept saying was, we wanted to, we were so close, we thought Herb was going to stop it, and then right when we were about to throw the towel, Calvin would land a big shot, Max would light him up, and then Calvin would land a big shot, and then he went into the corner, and I talked to Calvin, he was like, what's up? I'm fine. Yeah. I'm all here. I'm good to go. So he's like, I just couldn't, basically in a way he was saying Calvin earned the right to get that ass whooping. You know what I mean? And still had his wits about him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's gotta be tough too. Cause I've talked to Joey, that's my boxing coach, Joey Rodriguez before. And he's told me several times, we actually watched that fight together. But that fight and other fights, he was telling me too, years and years, because we've been working so long together. He's like, if you're ever in this position, or you're doing this and this, I'm throwing in the towel. I'm like, don't you dare. But in the end, he's looking out. But I would be so pissed. But at the end of the day, I know he's looking out for what's best for me. Even though I'm all fighters, we're focused just on what's going on in the moment. We're not thinking about a year, 5, 10, 15 years later. But it's it'd be tough. So I would hate to be in that position of Calvin's coach too. It's what do you do? Regardless, you throw it in, you're gonna get all this heat. You don't, you get all this heat. It's but the people that are doing that don't know shit about it. So
100%.
Yeah.
So I know your normal original timeline, you thought maybe July, August, you'd be able to get back in there. You don't think that's going to be feasible. So you're thinking maybe October, November, maybe is that best case scenario?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, October, November, possibly best case. I I feel like even just talking to my physical therapist, he's thinking like somewhere towards the end of the year. So with me, I'm like, how about this? And he's like, we'll see. I think he was just putting it in my head a while ago, and I was like, I'm glad you said that, just because I've been thinking about it, and I'm like, I can't do a whole lot, and then there's no way I can hop in there and fight. And knowing me, I'm always rushing things so I can get back and fight. And he's like, you don't want to rush this. But I'm like, I will fight this year. I'm just not sure yet. And unless the MRI comes back and they're like, oh, it's 100% healed, then I know it's just a mental thing, and I'll push through whatever to like get it going. But I don't think that's the case, because when I do certain things, I feel a lot of pain in my knee.
How has this affected you mentally? And sometimes, like, especially with the pandemic and stuff, like your mind can actually get sharper. Like, you're doing other things, like you're taking your mind off of fighting in some way and focusing it on other things. Like, how has this stretch of time been for you from a mental perspective?
Yeah, it's been tough. Like, I could say for sure, the 2 months I was in Vegas and I was doing so well, and I was way ahead of the game. So I was feeling great. And then when I got the MRI, or I was starting to feel tons of pain, like 3 months, 4 months, it limited me from doing a lot of the exercises and just PT. I'm doing PT every day, and I can't do things. So it starts to get kind of discouraging. And then I get an MRI and they're like, yeah, no wonder why. And I'm one of the lucky ones. This doesn't really happen to people. And so it happened to me. So I'm like, all right. And then I'm like, I go down the rabbit hole and I'm doing all my research, and I'm seeing different people that I talk to. So I think that messed with me a little bit more. And then, even doing the stem cells, that was a long procedure to kind of recover from. Like, they drilled into my back. So technically I had fractured back on, and then it was so painful. I was in a brace, no weight bearing for a week. And then I was in a straight leg brace again for another like 2-3 weeks on crutches. And I feel like I lost all the mobility again. I felt like my quad atrophied again. And so I had to start over. So it's been tough, that's for sure. And then, I just think, sometimes I'll think like bad things, like I'm not getting better, I'm getting older. I start, just thinking things I shouldn't, like, my knee's never going to get better, like things like this, like my career is over. But I know it's not. But yeah, it's been tough. That's for sure. My mentality. I haven't really, done a whole lot, like, because of the pandemic, everything's shut down, and I'm so focused on recovery. So I'm working every day, like I said, 6 days a week, multiple times a day, doing different things. So I've solely focused on this during this time still, so it hasn't really taken my mind off. I'm just like nonstop. I'm eating good. I'm working out. I'm trying to do what I can. So when I do get back to practice and 100%, I'll be able to just like accelerate like no other. And then it'll get me back into a fight.
Do you even think about like matchups, potential opponents? Like, I know like positionally there's, you want to get to the title and that's where you want to go, but are you even allowing yourself to like think about who you would fight next or who you would want to fight next, and like how things might line up by the time you're ready to return?
No, of course I've thought about that a lot. It's tough though, because everyone keeps fighting. I'm like, I'm going to come back here, and then everyone fights, and then people are losing. And then, I had this other setback. So I do want to fight up. The funny thing is, it's like every time a featherweight fights and then someone gets a knockout or something, it's always like, oh, they need to fight Josh Emmett. I'm like, well, if they have a 1 through 6 in front of them, like, okay, then let's do it. But I'm not fighting behind me. Like, I made that clear. I'm not going to fight anyone behind me, because otherwise my last handful of fights, I'm always fighting back. Like, I'm never going anywhere. I'll stay stagnant, and I do want to get closer to that title. I want big fights. I know what I can do. I've been doing this for so long. So, I would like someone in the top 3, the top 5, when I do come back to a big fight. But then who knows? Anything can happen with, this sport. Injuries can happen and people can fill in. So as soon as I can, I can do whatever. Like, I'll be ready. 4-week notice. That's all I need. I got the Burgos fight 4 weeks. It was a little sooner than I would have liked, but I said I can't take a fight unless it's at least 4 weeks out, because the weight is challenging for me to get down to.
I remember a couple of years ago we chatted. I'm trying to remember who you beat. I don't know if it was the Michael Johnson fight or maybe the one after that. And Jose Aldo was like on the top of your list. You're like, I want the Jose Aldo fight. He was kind of like your brass ring, so to speak. Like you wanted to get to the title, but Aldo was like the guy. You really wanted to fight him.
It was after the Bektik fight.
The Bektik fight, that's what it was.
I beat Johnson in March, and then Bektik in June, and then I wanted to fight Aldo at MSG in November.
That's right. That's what it was. Yeah. That's what it was.
Because he's a legend, and so it's like that. Like I think, I don't know. It's hard for me. Like I believe in myself, my coaches, my teammates, friends, everyone. So it's like I want to come back to a huge fight. A title eliminator. I was so close in 2018. I was ranked 4th in the world in 2017, 2018. There could have been a title eliminator fight, but I had a setback and all these things happen, But if I would have thought about it more as from a business standpoint, like a lot of fighters do, I was just like, hey, I've always said yes to every single fight. I've still never turned a fight down, even though I've seen people say I've turned them down. I was never offered those fights, but every single Sean calls my manager and hey, we got this guy. Yes. Or we have these two guys. Who do you want to fight? I want to fight the bigger guy, the bigger name guy. So it's I do want to come back to a big fight though. That's for sure.
So now that like Aldo is down at 35, who's kind of like the new Aldo in this division? Like who's the guy that like really stands out to you right now?
Well, really everyone is it's it's hard because I don't know how it really works in the top 6. You have, Kattar lost, but he lost to Max, who's like arguably the GOAT, and then Zombie lost to Ortega. So would I match up with someone coming off a loss? Who knows? Or do I fight someone that's on a winning streak like myself that sets me in line for a big win? So anyone else, there's only 5 people or 6 people in front of me.
Yeah. And then there's like Zabit, who we haven't seen since November of 2019, and other guys. Like we're just trying to still piece this thing together. Cause like last year, I would put like you and Shane as like one of the big fights in this division. It was like you guys, it was Kattar and Ige, it was the title fight, and then Ortega and Zombie, and that's it. Like those are the 4 big fights in the whole division last year. Wow.
Yeah. Now this year it's we'll see. So it's hard for me to even I never call anyone else out. I just want to, whoever's going to get me closer to that title. So it's like, they told me, hey, fight at welterweight or middleweight for, title eliminator. I'll take the fight. I'll still have to cut to make welterweight. That's
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What do you usually walk at?
Like mid 80s, that's why I could be a middleweight. I fought at welterweight, on the regional scene, I fought at 3 different weight classes, and so it's a tough cut. That's for sure.
Obviously, next Saturday, and it's sneaking up on us. Like I can't even believe that this fight's happening next Saturday, but Volkanovski Ortega for the title. We got 2 title fights. Everyone's still like hung over from UFC 259, and then we're looking at 261 now that Usman and Masvidal are headlining. But we got this fight coming up next Saturday. How do you like that fight? Like how do you see that one playing out between Volkanovski and Ortega?
Yeah, it's tough. Even like predicting fights, it's like, because I can always argue how both guys will win. It's we all know Ortega, he has the advantage on the ground. I don't think he'll get it to the ground, but he's also, if he's pressured against the cage, we've seen him, pull guillotines and stuff and pull guard from, a standing position. He looked great in his last fight, when a lot of people were thinking Zombie had the advantage on the feet, and then he came out and put it on him, almost knocked him out one round, and then he was just kind of picking him apart. He was implementing some takedowns. I don't know, because I can see how they both win, but Volkanovski has not lost. And was he on a 16 fight winning streak or something like that? He hasn't lost in the UFC. He's undefeated. He's beat, Max twice. He's beat Aldo. He beat Mendez. Like all these, he's, in my mind, like whoever holds the belt and the people he's beat, it's hard to bet against the champion, especially when they're on, such a high and they're doing so well. But but I'm excited for the fight. That's for sure. You know, I'm not really, I could see how both guys could win, but if so, I'm leaning towards Volkanovski, though. You know, he's a champion. He hasn't lost in the UFC. And I know styles make fights, but you see he's beat Max twice. Max beat Ortega, but Ortega is also, you know, looking really good and proved that in his last fight after, you know, a few year layoff, right?
It was like a year and a half or something. Yeah, it was a while.
Yeah. So
he shaved his head. He went bald Brian Ortega and was like a whole different guy, Josh.
Saying everyone that's shaving their head, they're doing really well.
Last thing before I let you go, I have to ask this because this has been like a topic of discussion amongst my colleagues for a little while now, because your old teammate TJ Dillashaw is coming back from the suspension, and everyone's talking about like who he should fight in his first fight back, and all these names are being thrown out there. And I've been saying since January 18th, the fight that should be made is Dillashaw versus Uriah Faber. And I know Uriah isn't like fully active, and I know he's not retired, but he's kind of like in that sweet spot where he'll still fight, but it's got to be something that really like gets him fired up and gets him motivated and amped up. And you have to imagine that one would check off all the boxes. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, have you talked to Uriah and, you know, his kind of gauge his interest in something like that?
Yeah, I feel like Uriah is always like, he's always in the gym. People know he lives a healthy lifestyle. He is getting up there in age, but he looks better than some of the guys in 2030. Like, he can go all day. He can roll with them. He's still beating them in practice. So I know he's all about, like what you said, anything that like gets him up and really motivates him. And as long as he can make a pretty penny, he always says, you know, if the money's right, he'll do it. So who knows though? But I also see with like the rankings and stuff, TJ, like he was the champion, and I know a lot of, I think he should, get a title shot right away, or, come back to a title eliminator. He wins that and then fight for the belt since he relinquished it, but, yeah, who knows with that fight? In my mind, I don't see it happening, but who knows?
All right, you just broke my heart a little bit, Josh. There you go. Because I mean, that could still be a title eliminator for him. You know what I mean? Like he could still fight for the belt after if he goes out there and has a good performance.
Yeah, that's true.
Because if you don't make it now, you can't make it.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I haven't been thinking about that.
Well, there you go, man. But I'm glad you're starting to turn the corner, man. I know it's been kind of a rough road for you, and hopefully November, December, and who knows, maybe, we're starting to get crowds back. Maybe you can come back in November. Maybe they'll be back at MSG and you can get your shot over there right in your comeback fight. So that'd be great. But I'm glad the recovery's going a little bit better for you, and looking forward to your return. But thank you for the time, Josh. Great catching up, and all the best on the road to recovery, my man.
Well, thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.